Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Roxanne with Speak Up, and today we're going to be talking about online learning and online platforms, and is this an environment that your child thrives in? So thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my co-moderator to introduce herself very quickly.
Hello, everyone. So I am Renee. I am with Speak Up as well as a parent engagement consultant. But more importantly, I relate to the story today that we're going to go over because I am a parent of two children, one in online school and one in traditional learning, the traditional setting. So this should be a fun conversation for me.
Thanks, Renee. I also myself am a parent, single mom with one daughter who has been in a brick and mortar charter school who's now going to be transitioning to an online platform in the fall. And we do have two parents joining us, Tanisha and Sharon. And in a little bit, we'll let them introduce themselves and share a little bit more of their story and talk about their children's experience. But real quickly, before we do that, I do want to talk about who Speak Up is. And so I'm going to attempt to share a screen real quickly here. Bear with me. Okay. I might have a little difficulty here. But what I want to talk about is for those of you who might be joining us for the first time, who is Speak Up? What kind of work do we do? And so that is what I'm going to introduce you to real quickly. So Speak Up was launched back in 2016 by a group of LAUSD parents that were fed up with decades of too many low-performing schools and feeling tired and ignored by their LAUSD board members. Speak Up wanted to build a more powerful parent voice on behalf of all kids attending LAUSD schools. Speak Up works with parents from all different types of school models. That includes traditional district schools, magnet schools, charter schools, pilot schools, dual language schools, online learning schools, and also homeschool as well. And we do this because we know that if parents unite, we can create a strong collective voice to push for change that is centered around our kids. One of the things you'll hear us say a lot of the time is that kids don't have lobbyists and kids don't have a union. Kids have parents, and parents are the only people whose sole interest is the success of our kids. So that is a little introduction to us. It looks like my slides are good. Is that true, Renee?
I don't see them. However, I just want to say that your introduction to Speak Up is correct. But one thing I want to point out is just so everyone knows that everyone part of Speak Up is a parent. And most of us have children in LAUSD. So we're speaking from the perspective of being parents actually interacting with this district. We're not one that's for or against public schools or for or against charter. We are parents. And, we've been hearing collectively that parents want to have a seat at the table. That's what Speak Up provides. We provide that seat at the table for parents.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm glad that we added that. So I'm going to try this again really quickly with my screen. Share. And there's a couple terms that I want to talk about that a lot of people are confused with. A lot of new terminology going on in the distance learning, online learning world. Are we able to see this slide?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, a couple words that we've all heard, thrown around is synchronous and asynchronous learning. What does that mean? So synchronous learning, communication happens in real time and students are learning at the same time. Possibly more engaging and effective, and it allows for instant feedback and clarification. Asynchronous learning is when students learn at different times, communication is not live, possibly more convenient and flexible, and allows students to work at their own pace. I'm going to go to our next one here. So what is distance learning? Distance learning is really what we've been doing for the last 15 months. So distance learning simply means the students and teachers are in different locations. There's interaction, instruction, and check-ins between teachers and students through the use of a technology device. Video or audio instruction, which is the primary mode of communication between the student and the teacher, is online. Interaction video or other instruction that relies on computer and communication technology. There is a use of print, video, and audio materials, incorporating assignments that are subject of written or oral feedback. I also want to say that this is basically, distance learning has basically been an attempt to model the regular school day and just put it on Zoom or, Google Meet, another platform where people can meet over technology. Not quite the same as online learning. So what's online learning versus hybrid? So online learning is a virtual classroom. It can be a blend of synchronous and asynchronous, depending on the program. Student attends virtual classes. Teachers work remotely, yet are the primary source of education. So they are providing the curriculum and they are the ones leading the classroom. With hybrid, it's a little bit more of everything. Students attend school only a few days a week for direct instruction, utilized a flipped classroom approach so they can work from home independently, and teachers plan for both synchronous and asynchronous learning. I'm going to jump to the next one here. And how does that compare to site-based school or homeschool, right? So traditional schools, as we most know, students attend school 5 days a week, teacher in the classroom with the students, teacher delivers all instruction, students are responsible to complete work in class and then homework, of course. Independent study or homeschool, student meets with their educational facilitator once every 20 days minimum. Parent, child, and educator create the learning path. Student receives money to use on approved vendors and curriculum, and it's 100% tailored to the individual student. And so I know that was a lot of terms there, but hopefully that adds some clarification to all of these new terms that we've been using. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and let the parents share a little bit about themselves and their experience and why they've chosen different educational options for their kids. So Tanisha, I'm going to go ahead and go to you first.
Hi, how are you guys? My name is Tanisha Hall, and I am a foster parent here in Los Angeles. I'm also an educator. I own a performing arts school, and we teach in charters throughout LA and Compton. And I have children in LAUSD and in online school. And I have 3 right now because they keep growing up and aging out. So I currently have 3. My youngest was in the 5th grade. He just graduated 5th grade. He was in traditional, our local school, which is an awesome school. I have 2 in high school, one that just graduated, and she was in our local high school, but I took her out at the end of the fall semester. And then my middle daughter is in the 10th going into 11th, and I've had her in online learning since the fall semester of 9th grade. The reason why I took her out is because our local high school just wasn't providing the structure that she needed. And we were getting a lot of discipline issues. And a lot of it started in the middle school. The middle school, the kids come from elementary school and they're bright and thriving and energetic. And then they go to our local middle school and it's kind of like a mini prison and they're kind of beat down, and I have my child calling me from school, telling me things that are happening. And, I run up there and see what's going on. And too many times I'm having to, confront administrators and confront teachers, to, advocate on behalf of my child who is at the time like 11, 12 years old and can't properly advocate for herself. And it became known that, if Miss Hall comes, it's going to be a problem, so, but it shouldn't be like, I shouldn't, my daughter shouldn't get preferential treatment because they know that her mother will be there immediately. And then in the high school, we were having many issues and I was just like, you know what? My child is smart. She's bright. I need to get her back on track. So I put her, I looked for different charter schools and different things in the area, but I just couldn't find anything that I felt comfortable you know, where my child could be. And I know that I can trust her, where, you know, who she's with. I can trust the surroundings. I can trust that, you know, she's going to be thriving, and not kind of be held down. And there's plenty of great, you know, charter schools, but I think for what we needed at the time, I needed to kind of isolate her and get her back on track. So we've done the online school with her for the past year and a half. Her grades went from the first semester in ninth grade at our local high school, straight Fs, to now she has pretty much all A's and like 1 or 2 B's, because she's given the opportunity. Yeah, she's given the opportunity to learn at her pace and to learn the way that she needs to learn. She's a visually creative person, and they give her opportunities to, you know, to pull the work out in different ways. It's not always about writing an essay. Sometimes it's about doing a photo essay, doing different things so that she is able to pull the information out in a way that works for her. My 12th grader, she was in the traditional local high school up until the fall of this past year. And the school just, in my opinion, did not handle the transition well into online, the distance learning. And being that she was a senior and it's a critical year, you know, going into college, there's a lot of things that she needs to know. And I just felt like her ability to graduate was being threatened. And I needed to make sure that my child graduated. She was being bullied by some teachers at the local high school. And it was one thing when she would tell me, you know, when they're in school and they come back and this teacher did this teacher did that. But when they were on Zoom, I was actually hearing, you know, that was the difference. You know, I'm in the classroom too. And I'm like, wait, that teacher just talked to my child like that? Well, hold on, you know, and, you know, the kids would be in the class and there's an instance where, you know, she was in the class and the teacher was just kind of talking reckless to her. And I was like, give me that computer. And I put this, you know, the camera on and it was me. And she's like, oh, hi, Mom. Yeah. Hi, Mom. I'm going to need you to not talk to my child like that, you know, because then you trigger my child. And now I'm dealing for the rest of the day, this child that's now triggered and upset and all of this. And I didn't send her, you know, she didn't get on a Zoom like that. So, you know, I was like, you know, this just isn't working for us. And, you know, it's like they'd be on the Zoom all day and then have an obscene amount of homework all night long. And it's just like, you know what, I can put you in this online school like I have the other one and you can just do the work, you know, and that's actually really preparing you more for college where you're going to have to be more independent and everything anyway. And, you know, her last semester at the traditional high school, I basically, you know, had to pull D's out of every teacher because I said, if you fail my child, you will not enjoy what's going to happen next. So, you know, they gave her D's, but this past semester, her taking the second half of those same classes, she got straight A's. And the online school, still doing the work, actually having to make up some other classes, you know, doing a lot of work, you know, but straight A's, doing the same work.
That's great to hear. Glad to hear that after all of that, there were some positive outcomes. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Tanisha. I really appreciate you breaking it all down. Sharon, you want to go ahead and share and introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for having me. And Tanisha, I loved hearing your story. I could relate to so many aspects of it. So I have 3 sons. They're 4, 8, and 11. About 4 years ago, my oldest son started out of nowhere, sort of became a working actor. And that's kind of the main reason that online has really worked for us. But even prior to him acting and us needing a really flexible way to do school, we were already starting to try different options because we started in our traditional public school down the street, which is considered a very high performing school. And I had a very similar experience. I was there volunteering and it seemed like it was run like a prison. I just couldn't believe how they were talking to these little kids. And my son sort of, he knew I wasn't reinforcing the discipline at home. And so he started to have behavioral problems and he was starting to develop a reputation. And, you know, so we were looking for other options already. And this was before he ever started, you know, having a job. We eventually went to an amazing project-based learning charter school that was actually a hybrid homeschool program. I had never even heard of this. I had never really even heard of homeschooling at this point. But it was basically where you would go 2 days a week Then 2 days a week, you would do independent study. You could either do that from home or you could do it at school with a facilitator that would help you along. But it was the idea of teaching kids, even from kindergarten, to do, as Tanisha said, to start motivating themselves to do the work. If someone's constantly telling you what to do, you're just going to look for instruction all the time. You're not going to, develop a sense of motivation. So unfortunately, after a 1.5 year fight, that school was shut down. And it still feels like a punch in the face because that place was perfect for us. And then, while we were there, my son had started acting, and they had, you could do all your work from home if you had to, because it was a hybrid homeschool program. They didn't have attendance requirements. So you could be around other kids, and you could also, do your work from home if you had. There were a lot of kids there that were like professional athletes or actors, and also just kids who that lifestyle worked for their family. Like I said, when we started there, it just worked for us. We just liked it. We just liked it better than, like, we used to run every morning to the local school, and we would, they'd be slamming the gate on us right at 8:01, and we had such a nicer, better experience. It almost felt like we were in a private school because there were only 100 kids, and they were really able to individualize my son's learning. For example, he started doing math and English in he was in, let's say first grade when he went there, and he started going to the older classroom. They had split classes, and he was doing math and English there. And eventually he didn't want to go back to the younger classroom at all because he sort of felt like it was, babyish or whatever. And they, got together with us and said, if he feels happy and successful there, let's keep him there. And so it was just something we never would have been able to do in a bigger school. So he was accelerated, and it's been a good experience for him. But after that school was shut down, we tried a brick and mortar PBL charter. We have tried, and that was really far away. We couldn't deal with the commute. It was just too much. And then we ended up, we did also, we've done everything on Roxanne's slides, basically, is what I'm saying. We also did homeschooling through the charter because the nonprofit that ran the hybrid homeschool that we were doing had all these options. So it was so nice. We could try their brick and mortar charter. It didn't really work for us because by then he was acting. So but we ended up trying the homeschool concept, and we eventually landed in their online school. And that has been so great for us in terms of just his, schedule flexibility, and just treating him like someone who they trust to get the work done. He is really well supported. It's all asynchronous, which for us is everything, not just because of his acting schedule, but because it just works for our family. He can do it any time of day. There's no reason why he has to be up at, 7 a.m. and sitting online for 3 hours at a time. He can just do it when he wants to. The other thing I like about online is that, like, when we tried the homeschool option, for example, we had to come up with our own curriculum. And I'm not an educator. I didn't want to do that. And it was really a learning curve for me. And I eventually, started to understand it, but it was a real challenge. And what I liked about online is that at the school we go to, they provide the curriculum, but they do it with choice. So he goes into a course catalog and chooses among classes, kind of like college. So it's like you can choose between these 10 English classes per quarter. They all fit the California state standards. And so you're still choosing, and you're not just doing a cookie cutter curriculum, but at least the class is provided for you. And then each class itself has a teacher supporting it. And then each student has a coach that, is following along what they're doing. And of course, you're meeting with them every 3 weeks, like you do with homeschooling. But you don't get funds, for example. The funds go to the school to provide all this stuff for you. And sometimes they provide materials and things like that. So I actually liked that. I didn't, because the funds just stressed me out. I couldn't figure out what to do with them. And the process of ordering things was complicated. And so anyway, it really worked with us for a number of reasons. And we're really, really happy with the online situation.
I just want to say thank you, Tanisha and Sharon, for sharing your stories, but also when you're listening to the stories, it's so different, the backgrounds and why you guys chose that route. And it just shows that the traditional system, used to be or is one size fits all, but that's not the case. I mean, you guys are two totally different women with two totally different stories and found a way for your children to be successful through distance learning. And it looks different in each situation. And I'll also throw in my story as well, so you guys know a little bit about myself, is I have a son who is 14 years old that's in special education. And similar to your story, Tanisha, he would go to school, and I would get a lot of phone calls about behavioral issues. And, it would be so bad that if I saw the school district's, his school's phone number in my phone, it was like my anxiety would drive. And it's like, you're calling me, but you're supposed to be the trained professionals. You guys are writing these behavior plans explaining like how my son's supposed to act, but you're still calling me. And so with that being said, with this pandemic, I never thought about doing distance learning or homeschool or anything different. I always thought public school was the only option, my son going to school in a classroom. But this pandemic opened my eyes because, at first I was against my son doing distance learning because it didn't make sense. It was new. It was like, he's in special education. He should be in a classroom. But after a while, once I embraced it and I was able to have him his individual assistant, my son has thrived. There is no more behavioral problems. We've been able to course correct and redirect and just put different strategies in place that have made my son very successful. So now I'm at the point where it's like, does my son go back to LAUSD, or do I find some sort of distant learning program moving forward because I see that it works? So I just wanted to share that with you so that way you guys know we are all on the same page, that, we're all going through the same thing. But one thing, Sharon, that you shared that, I've always struggled with and try to figure out the best thing for my son is that there's aspects of school that provides, social development as well as appropriateness. And so I heard you say that your school, at your son's program, they can go on campus and be around other people. And, whereas with my son, he's, distance learning, so it's 100% home. And Tanisha, I don't know what your daughter's experience is, but how have you guys been able to supplement the social needs of our children since they are doing a program online?
Well, I'll say that now that he's in the fully online program, he actually can't participate on campus or anything. And so it has been something that we that's sort of an extra effort that you have to make. I'm part of a lot of homeschool groups on Facebook, and they now, because of the pandemic, the events have been canceled and so forth, but there's lots of get-togethers for those kids, and it's definitely an added thing that you worry about and you have to kind of force yourself to do. When he was in his traditional school, he made a few close friends that he's still in touch with, and so we try to see those kids as often as possible. They live in our neighborhood, and so I do my best with that. But it is something that I worry about because also he works and he's the only kid on set. He happens to be, and so it's like I worry about that.
I'll say my daughter that I put in the distance learning, she hates it. I don't care because, it's just like, I care, but I don't care because it's just like, this is what we need for your future. Again, same like Sharon, there's some friends that she has, but we've had to, we need to make new friends and do that. So I'm actually putting her back into traditional school for this fall coming up. I found I guess it's a magnet school that I think it's going to be a good fit for her. She's going into 11th grade. And, I feel like what we've done over the past, year and a half and getting her more structured and getting her, back up, to par when it comes to grades and learning. I think that she's now ready and mature enough to go back into the classroom, because the thing about the classroom, it's more than just the learning. There's discipline, there's all of this. And I feel that, and I told my son who's in elementary school, I was talking to the principal, and I said, I feel like these kids have done so much better this year in the distance learning because we didn't have the discipline issues. You know, the teachers were just able to focus on learning, and they were able to take out that discipline issue and just focus on, wow, this kid needs extra reading help. So where we were just having them on recess and playing around on the playground, guess what? We have this group that's going to go and have reading help. We have this group, you know, math help. And I feel like they were able to really just like narrow in on the children and get them to thrive better. So, you know, there's benefits to distance and online learning. Online, I feel like is much better for older kids, high school, and, you know, sharing like with a working child. The distance learning was good for my elementary school son because he does need kind of that more guided structure and the teacher and all of that. I have him actually pre-enrolled to start in the online school that I had my other children in, but I'm having a debate. He's going into middle school. And he said he wants to stay home. And, you know, I'm like, okay, you know, I'm weighing it. But again, there's that social aspect, which is why, you know, I'll probably make a decision about him in the next like week or two as, you know, traditional charter, small charter, or to stay home. But the social issue is a big deal. And I feel like unless, you know, and also with the pandemic, because there have been less opportunities, you know, in other times, you know, we have church, or, you know, different social groups, or, you know, athletics. But because a lot of that's been shut down, we've been this, you know, precarious time. But I've, you know, I agree with Sharon. It's like, it's a thing that you can't avoid when you have distance learning.
But you're so right. There are other options. Like you say, there are athletics, there are religious organizations that you can, you know, the community, so much else that we haven't been able to point to lately. And I just want to also just point out that, you know, alarms are always raised. And if you go on any of these homeschool groups on Facebook, they're always saying, ugh, my kid is socialized. They're fine. You know, they learn from their siblings. They learn from us. You know, we take them out all the time. They interact with adults. They go to museums. They go to, you know, they go to baseball games. They go to things where, you know, and then, you know, you have to also, I don't mean to do like a whataboutism kind of thing, but like there are some things about socialization at school that are negative, like bullying, and, you know, they can be bullied by other kids, or, you know, the kids are sort of on their own to do a, you know, I'm not saying it's all Lord of the Flies, but, you know, and I've had, you know, my son has had teachers be mean to him because they think he's like a little snot, you know, because he came in, he's, you know, he acts. And so they just assumed that he was this little, you know, and so, you know, there are lots of other opportunities for socialization that are outside of the traditional school environment.
That's definitely one I'm going to jump in on. So with my daughter, when it comes to social emotional, it's a big deal. So my daughter has had anxiety around going to school since kindergarten. And it started really with state testing. And because she's gone to a charter school since kindergarten, she's always been tested. I don't know why so early, to be honest, but, you know, charter schools are held to this higher standard. And if the test scores do not add up and are not where they should be when it comes time for renewal, that school may not be renewed. And I know schools don't intend to do it, but a lot of that pressure gets transferred into the child, even just in traditional schools, right? Kids feel that pressure. And so I was getting phone calls in kindergarten, like, your daughter is having like a meltdown. And I was like, what? And so I went in to go see the testing, and this is kindergarten. And they were literally sitting there with those little dividers. When I walked in, I was like, wait, I'm sorry, is this high school? Like, what is this? What is going on? You know, I couldn't believe it. And so ever since then, testing has been hard, you know, and so every year. And so she's gotten better over the years, and the teachers were really good about, you know, working with her and finding ways to make her feel more comfortable. But I will tell you this, when school shut down and I was like, you know, you're not going to go to school anymore, you're going to be in line, you could see the relief, just a wave over her of how relieved she felt. And this is a whole other topic, but just to throw it in, one of the first things she said was, well, at least I don't have to worry about school shootings for a while. That's real. Okay, we could talk about that another episode, but that's real. And so my daughter's an introvert, and she loves being home, and she does not want to go back to school. And so we are going to stay online with a different platform in the fall. I do worry about the social emotional part because I haven't been able to get her out of her room for like the last 6 months. You know, teenager, she's in the 7th grade, 13, going into the 8th grade. And, you know, so little by little, I'm trying to just get her to go back in public, eat in a restaurant, you know, do some of these things that we did, but she's like, can we go home? Can we go home? And so I cannot imagine putting her on campus 5 days a week in a couple months, right? Because let's be realistic, it's only a couple months away. Summer's not that long. And so for me, those are some of the reasons why. And we're going to try online for 8th grade this last year in middle school. And then we'll see. When it comes time for high school, we might go back on campus. You know, it kind of just depends. So those are some of the things. And there is a data point I want to share with you guys real quickly that really was, you know, part of why we wanted to talk about this. Was there was an NPR poll done, and out of the parents that were polled, 1/3 came back and said that they may want to stick with remote learning indefinitely. And I'm going to hand it to Renee to let her go into some of the statistics, because what did not surprise me is a lot of those families were Black and brown families and minority families that felt more comfortable for a lot of the reasons that you guys said right now. So I'll let Renee jump in there and share a little bit of that information.
Sure. So before I jump into that, you know, we're going to talk about the statistics and how it affected people of color, you know, differently when it comes to distance learning. And I think I can speak to, you know, prior to the pandemic, the thought of charter school, our independent study, home learning, it just seemed crazy to me. But now with this pandemic, I think my eyes and the eyes of so many of my peers, Black, Hispanic, and other, we see this totally different. It is need for a change. And so with that being said, 8 in 10 Black parents support the American Rescue Plan, but not for business as usual. You know, that's something that is constantly being heard. No one wants to go back to the way that it was because it was failing many of our students. And on top of that, 70% of Black students want bold change to support student success. And that's something that LAUSD has committed to doing. But, you know, as a parent, I actually want to see that happen with their Black Student Achievement Plan. Also, you know, there is the education, the ESA, and basically fully 54% of respondents said they'll vote yes for an educational savings account. And just to give you guys a little background on educational savings account, it's not so much a voucher, it's very different than that. Basically, it's just allowing parents to take the public school funding to other programs that better benefit their child. And that way they can use it on continued academics or development options, or however they choose. So that way we are able to ensure that our children is able to succeed within the traditional schools model, or, you know, at home in the distance learning model, however we choose as parents. So that choice that choice is something that a lot of parents are looking for. Also, there was enthusiasm for the educational savings account that was higher among African-American parents and Hispanic voters, which is very different than if we would have brought this up 4 years ago. Also, 71 and 66% of those Hispanic and Black voters said that they would vote yes for it. With that being said, 61% of voters think that minority students are being failed by public schools, and that something like this ESA could actually help them. So, you know, with that being said, this isn't about, you know, anyone's political views. This isn't about vouchers or anything else. This is just about parents having choice to find options to make their child successful. So with that being said, I mean, do you guys think that, you know, any other options, or maybe you guys have already seen it, options would propel your children's academic growth in distance learning if parents had that choice, if more parents had the choice to do what works for their children?
Well, I'll chime in if you don't mind, Sharon, and say, you know, I found out about distance learning and online programs as an educator because, you know, with the funds, our clients would say, hey, I have these funds, and they, you know, we'd be teaching them. And I was like, wow, you know, these programs are really cool. And so when I needed a resource for my child, I was like, hey, there's this program. Let me put my child in. And I've also enrolled like neighborhood kids. So we have like this whole collective now of kids that have enrolled into this online program because it just works for different reasons. One of our neighbors, their son was going through some kind of like emotional issues, and he just could not go to the classroom. Smart kid, had great grades, but he just was having, would just literally have anxiety attacks going into the classroom. And, and this he's an 11th grader. And it was like, hey, let's just take the classroom out of the conversation and get him in, so I had the privilege of knowing the resource was there. The problem is most people, especially in my community where I'm at in South LA, don't know that the resource is there. They don't know about the options. We just know that there's this charter school, this charter school, this charter school. A lot of them have a wait list. You can't get in. You have to, enroll on. But sometimes you need to get your kid, into something immediately. I need to switch gears, and that's where we have the issues. So I feel that, like Sharon has a particular issue. You have we all have, again, different backgrounds and different reasons why distance and online learning works for our kids. But the biggest part is people knowing about it, the legislation that keeps trying to stop it because they know that we're winning. We're winning. When I was in the 7th grade, we lived in a town, we lived in Ashwaubenon, Wisconsin. And that school district, I went from being a thriving kid to failing. I failed like the first semester of the 7th grade. My mom was like, not a chance. We were the only Black family like in the town and in the school district. My mom was like, you're not going to fail my kids. They can't afford to fail. She took us out, found a homeschool program through a Christian school and homeschooled us until, for the remaining of that school year. And then we moved. But it was just like, that's what you have to do, and coming from, that background where my mother stood up and advocated for us and taught us at home and made sure that we got what we needed. That's why I'm in that position. I just wish that more parents and more of our community knew about the other resources. And I feel like that's what happened in this pandemic is when LAUSD was failing in the distance learning and parents were like, yo, what's going on? They started seeking out online schools like the one that we're in, got flooded, inundated, because they're like, okay, these kids are home, but this ain't it, and they started researching other opportunities. And I feel that that's why all of those statistics are different, because people are like, I didn't even know about this 4 years ago. Who knew this program was around? Who knew it was so great? My kid's still taking AP class, but at home and able to do it and take a rest, eat their snack, and do all this kind of stuff. So I mean, I feel that it's more about just being aware, the awareness. Sharon?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I felt incredibly privileged to know about this because even though like we were within this charter school, the nonprofit that ran it had all these other options. They had the homeschool option, they had the online option. I wouldn't have known about it if we just hadn't fallen into that environment. I mean, just like a lot of other people, I thought online school was like some kind of for-profit thing that was some kind of scam. And so when we discovered oh, sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned that. When we discovered the online school, I was so relieved. I mean, it provided everything we needed. It was the flexibility. It was the flexibility was number one, but also providing the curriculum option for us so that we didn't have to create that, because that was an incredible amount of stress on us trying to work that out. But yeah, you're right. It's about people knowing about it. It's about, and I did want to say earlier that I feel incredibly grateful that these options exist. And the fact that people are trying to take them away, especially now after people have discovered them in the pandemic, is crazy.
That is actually, that's my next question. So my next question is, because what you're both bringing up about they're talking about it right now in Sacramento. It's happening as we speak. They're doing it behind closed doors, and they're deciding whether our kids can have online options or not after just forcing us to be online for 15 months, right? This really upsets me. So the question is, how would losing your online platform affect your child academically, mentally, and emotionally? And Tanisha, if you want to go first, and Sharon just did.
It would, especially after this pandemic where, like you said, they forced us to be online. We didn't have an option. They forced us. Now, thankfully, myself and Sharon and, we were already online. And I got to see the difference because I had a child who was already online. Then I had two children who were not. And The elementary school handled it great. All they did was they kept the kids with the same teacher, and then the teacher that taught the 4th grade taught the 5th grade, right? And she had a relationship with these kids. She knew these kids. You know, I had a situation with my son, and, you know, me and this teacher are texting, and we have a, you know, so that was great. If we had had a new teacher and all that, it probably wouldn't have been as great an experience as it was for my elementary school. My daughter that was in high school, in the traditional high school with that distance learning, complete fail. And I was like, now, and I have the other child who's in the online school, and she's just zooming along and doing great. And my daughter was like, I want to do what she's doing. You know what I mean? She gets to wake up at 11 o'clock and do her work and whatever. And I'm over here in Zooms all day and doing 2-3 hours of homework at night. And they're still failing me because they're teaching me material that they haven't prepared me for. And they're not properly teaching the material. What the heck? This is dumb. I was like, I agree. It is dumb. So we're going to put you in this situation where you can thrive, where you can be successful. Because as a parent, it's our job to make sure that our children succeed. The local public schools, especially here in the majority Black and brown neighborhoods, are not setting our children up to succeed. They're not preparing our children to go to college. They're not preparing our children to be successful if they do squeak into a Cal State. That's the best that you can do. If you graduate from one of these schools south of Pico, you can maybe squeak into Cal State Dominguez, squeak into a Cal State college. You can squeak into there, but usually it's going to take you 8 years to graduate because they haven't set you up to even be able to be successful. It's you know, I've said before, and I'll say it again. I feel like we need to do a teacher swap. We need to take all of the teachers north of Pico, all the teachers south of Pico, and we need to flip schools for like a week, right? They need to flip schools for a week so that those teachers up there can see what is happening down here. Because a lot of the problems are with the administration. They're with, you know, poor, not having enough books, not having enough, you know, resources, not having proper, you know, they're more focusing on discipline and like policing the children instead of dealing with the emotional issues that a lot of these children are dealing with, you know, especially in our neighborhood where we have a lot of children in foster care. We have a lot of children removed from their families. We have a lot of children who are traumatized. We have a lot of children who are born with drug and alcohol addiction. And, you know, we have a lot of children who are coming to school. They're coming to school where they're in neglected or abused homes. They're hungry. You know, they're malnourished, and they're coming to a situation where you walk in the door, somebody might have cussed you out on your way out the door to school, and then you get to school and they're like, get there, blah, blah, blah. I'm not trying to learn. Okay, so.
Yeah, those are really good examples. Oh, go ahead, Renee.
Yeah, I just want to second everything you said, Tanisha, because I'm actually a resident here in South LA. And, you know, maybe my son would have had a better experience had he went to school on the West Side, because right now he's going to school in South LA. Whereas my daughter, being a kindergartner, we drive 30, sometimes 40 minutes based on the traffic all the way to the West Side. Mm-hmm. So my daughter can have a good education. And it's something that we experience in Board District 1 rather than other districts, is that I want to say McKenna put out a statement that said most of the middle class are affluent families within Board District 1. They transfer their children out of this area. So this area is, you know, I don't want to say stuck, that's the wrong word, but it's predominantly lower income Black and brown children that go here because they don't have any options, or they don't know that they have options. So I would say there's still parents who are not engaged and involved, because those of us parents, now I was a parent that's engaged and involved, and I've tried. I have literally, because I'm a product of a public school, you know, and I believe public schools can be good. But again, I was not raised in Los Angeles. I was raised in suburban areas where the local public schools are amazing. They offer everything. I took ceramics and this and blah, blah, blah. They don't offer that. They don't offer anything to our kids, not here in South LA. So I have tried. I'm a homeowner. I'm a taxpayer, you know, so I've tried to continue to keep my kids here, but it got to the point where I'm like, this is actually hurting my children.
keeping my kids in this local school is hurting my children.
I want to go to Sharon after this real quickly. I just want to add, I'm in the San Fernando Valley and we experience the same thing. And the south side of the valley and the north side of the valley are two different worlds. I live in the northeast. Swap those teachers. Swap them. Swap those teachers, you know, in Woodland Hills and Encino with teachers in Pacoima and San Fernando and Silmar, where I live. It's the same thing. My daughter's neighborhood school was a 2 out of 10 on greatschools.org, like 2 out of 10. And so that is actually why this area, Board District 6, has quite a bit of charter schools, because they are the higher quality schools. But go ahead, Sharon. I definitely want to hear how this question hits you and your response.
Well, I mean, to put it in a short version.
You've been through it actually before.
Yeah, it was devastating when the thing that worked for us was taken away. And it wasn't taken away for any good reason. It was all politics. And so we'd be devastated. Like, that's the short answer. We'd be devastated. On the other hand, because I'm able and to be involved, I will find something else. I know I will, but there are a lot of people who don't have that option. You know, they're busy. They're doing other things. That it should be open and accessible to everyone.
Absolutely. Accessibility is key.
Also, you know, there's a couple other questions that we have. I think you might have covered some of those, Renee.
Oh, you know, it's so funny though. If we thought about a teacher swap, we also need an administration swap. Because I will say, when I go to my daughter's school on the West Side, as soon as you walk into the office, it's like, "Hi, how are you? What can I help you with?" My son's school, it's like the administration is sitting there, and it's like, "Hello, I'm standing here." Totally different experience, and that's how you start your day. You know? So, you know,
finish your statement. I'm sorry, Renee.
No, so when I think about, you know, my son possibly losing the online platform, you know, it makes me anxious. It makes me scared, because I do not want to send him back now, because I found something better and that works. So why would I send him into an environment that he has struggled and suffered in for the last, you know, however many years? Like, if he doesn't have to go through that, why would I send him there? So if it was taken from me, I don't know. I really don't know what I would do, but I would figure it out. But I know he's not going back to a traditional public school setting.
That's what I keep saying in general. When I'm talking to the legislators, it's like, we're not going back. That's the thing. We've seen the alternatives. And so take it away from us, we're going to find something else. But we're not going back to where our kids struggled and where they felt bad about themselves and where they were, you know, mistreated. Or if it just wasn't right for them. Like, it's fine if it's right for other people, but if it's not right for your kid and you found another option, I feel the same way. If this gets taken away, it's not like I'm going to go back to our local school where I had a bad experience. So they're stuck with us doing something else.
Right. Like, we're not going to go. We're not going to go back to a low performing school that we left. And actually, I want to bring you in, Sharon, on something else that you experienced. But real quick, what can we do about this? Like, you know, we can talk about this and be frustrated and be angry, right? You know, but what can we do about this? And so recently there was a bill that we did a Facebook Live a few weeks ago on. Tanisha was here as well. We talked about AB 1316, which was going to put a lot of fees on brick and mortar charter schools that were really unnecessarily, basically giving more money to the bureaucracy and taking it out of the classroom, but it was also going to highly impact online schools. Now, that bill was killed, but they're still trying to put in something in the budget trailer bill to extend a 3-year moratorium on new online schools. That tells me, oh, that's what this is all about. This is all about, you don't want us to be online. You want to get us all back in the classroom in the fall and on campus, and we're telling you that is not going to work with us. And so many of us talk to legislators. And so I found that a lot of legislators were like, oh, well, it's not going to be the charter schools on campus, just online. Like, oh, who cares about that? And there's also this sense of like that they're all corrupt. So Sharon, I wanted you to just kind of explain your experience, and then we can talk about what we can do and get in front of these legislators and school board members to talk about this. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sharon.
I mean, like I keep saying, that ship has sailed. People join the 21st century. Like, you can't just force us back because you take the option away. So I know I'm beating a dead horse when I keep saying that over and over again, but I feel very strongly about that. And every time I meet with a legislator about this topic, I let them know this is the 21st century. This is what people are doing now. Once people have had options, you cannot force them back. But I also wanted to say now, as Tanisha was saying, that parents need to be educated about all the options that are out there. So do legislators. I was in a Zoom call with an assembly member, and it was actually about a bunch of issues. But when the topic, I actually brought up his stance on AB 1316, and his response was so shocking to me that I lost my mind, and basically what he said was he doesn't understand why anyone would go to a non-classroom based charter school. He doesn't understand why anyone would need it, what the purpose of it is, and that the only reason you would ever need to do it would be if you had some kind of an extreme situation, like your parents were migrant workers or you were extremely disabled. Those were the two examples he gave for why you might need to do that. So, I mean, this is a really out of touch point of view. I mean, first of all, even before the pandemic, the homeschooling movement has been, growing and growing and growing. Like, I became aware of it a few years ago through this charter that we were attending. And I started to realize, oh my God, it's not all, necessarily, religious folks that don't want to go to the public schools. It's, it's all kinds of people now are choosing to do this because it works for their kids. So I'm not even talking about online. I'm just talking about the people who homeschool through charters, but that's included in what this assembly member was talking about. He was talking about these non-classroom based charter schools, and they're serving so many kids. And then to be that out of touch, to say that after the pandemic, when so many parents have sort of had the curtain pulled back on what's really going on, because they've been able to observe, like you said, Tanisha, you were able to observe the way that, your child's teacher was talking to them or whatever wasn't working. And they've chosen these options now. And so now we're trying to shut them down even more. But it was shocking to me that not only was he trying to shut them down, but not even on the same planet in terms of knowing what they're all about. So I felt like we need advocacy that's just ongoing. We can't wait until another bill pops up that scares all of us into, oh my God, we're going to lose our options. I think we need this just consistent, steady advocacy where we go in and we present ourselves as regular people who have chosen these, respectable, because I think there's this impression that a lot of people homeschool are weird or crazy. And I think that we have to show up in these offices, present ourselves as, normal people. We're constituents, we vote, and there's a lot of us. And here's why these options work for us and why they can't be taken away. And we have to do it year round. We can't wait until these bills come out and all of a sudden we ramp up into, a frenzy.
Right. And the biggest reason why I wanted to talk about this and have this discussion is because exactly what you said is the route that they're going in. So, I've been advocating for LAUSD to keep an online virtual academy, right? And so they announced a little while ago that they were, and it was like, oh, great. Well, it's not going to be as great as we thought. One, they're discouraging parents from enrolling their kids in it. Unless their kids are severely medically disabled, they're discouraging, somebody like me, my daughter maybe doesn't have an IEP or any kind of diagnosis like that, but she has severe anxiety, right? And so, and it's, I see the way it's connecting. It's happening in the school board levels. It's happening at the state. And so that's why I'm going to go ahead, as far as a way to take action, I'm going to put my email out there, because I want to start organizing meetings where we can get in front of these legislators and help parents who haven't done this before. All of our school board members in LAUSD, board districts 1 through 7, right? And then our assembly members for sure, because they have a lot of say in education, and even senators as well. So I'm going to throw my email up there. I also just want to make one little shout out and correction. As far as the slides that I showed earlier, I can't take credit for those. Those are not mine. Those belong to an educator named Farnaz Kaufman, who is certified by UCLA as an online teacher. And she is the one who has broke this down and really explained all of this. And so just want to give her a shout out and appreciate her sharing that, because it starts there, right? With understanding the terminology and what's what, because these legislators don't know. But if you guys want to go ahead and jump in anywhere as far as next steps and taking action, any last thoughts, please go ahead and do so.
I did want to just add one thing that I had stuck in my notes, which I think is really important for people to know, is that if you're talking to people, if these people literally know nothing about this topic that's so important, these are the people that make the decisions that affect our lives. And so we absolutely have to educate them. These are the state legislators, especially, you know, we kind of don't pay attention to who they are. We don't pay that much attention to their elections and stuff. And it's like, these are actually the folks that make the decisions that affect our day-to-day lives. And your kid's education is so important. And so I just want to kind of, you know, reiterate that, you know, these people need to know what they're talking about, and they have to be educated by us, because there's a zillion bills they're looking at. And if there people who don't care aren't explaining it to them, then they're not going to know. And they're just going to vote with their party, probably. I'm not, you know, so
exactly.
The more we can do to educate them, the better.
Yeah, exactly.
I find it really helpful, the templates that were put up, you know, for messaging your assembly member and congressperson, and I did them all and shared them, because I'm not a legislator, I'm not a lobbyist, I don't know, you know, I'm just a concerned parent. And so, you know, those tools, having those tools available, you know, for those of us who, you know, have a network of people to be able to share it out. And I know the people I shared it with, they did it and shared it. So just having those resources and like, you know, you were saying, Roxanne and Sharon, like continuing it in the off season, right? Because like, you know, you win games by how you train in the off season. And, you know, AB 13 was killed, but we're not done. You know, they're still attacking, and they're still trying to, because, you know, they want to keep the government control of education, and knowing that, you know, online schools, yes, in everything, there's bad and good. There's people who took advantage of the opportunity. Yes, absolutely. But there's public schools that are taking advantage of the opportunity as well, and they're not trying to shut that down, you know. And then UCLA and USC taking over these schools is not always an option as well. You know, we need really big change within the school district. You know, the school district is too big. It's too big. You know, it might need to be broken up. You know, there might need to be like LAUSD goes so big. You know, they have too many kids, and I feel like that's why there's so many problems. I live near Inglewood. No, not that Inglewood's that great, but because it's a smaller school district, they're able to do things. You can make decisions faster. With LAUSD, is so much red tape and so much bureaucracy because it's just too big. You know, and I feel like there's a lot of things that need to be looked into, how this school district operates, how they're taking care of our children. Because I feel like this, maybe I'm a communist mentality, but my child here in South LA should be getting the identical education to a child that's in Pacific Palisades. They're both LAUSD.
Yeah. You know,
Absolutely.
that's a really good point. And LAUSD is the largest school district in the state, second largest in the country. And when you even bring up breaking up the school districts in front of some people, they freak out. And there was a time not too long ago, Sharon might remember, when the Valley tried to break off into its own school district, because the Valley alone is huge, right? And make these school districts more manageable for these board members. I just want to mention too, before we go, another thing we can do to take action, again, parents can contact me and reach out to me about this, is speak at board meetings, calling up and speaking at the board meetings, not just when there's some type of threat, but just all the time, year round, like we talked about, right? Now there's a way where you can call in. I can help parents with that, prepare, you know, prep themselves and just how to address the board in a 3-minute time. But we need to keep this issue at the top. And that's a really great way to do that. The parents who want schools open 5 days a week and back on campus have been doing that, and their voices are being heard. And I have nothing against those parents. I know a lot of them and understand where they're coming from, but it is kind of drowning out our voices, right? So let's raise our voices up on the school board level, one-on-one with school board members, state legislator, and if we can get to the governor who had his kids enrolled in private schools during this whole pandemic, he should be listening as well. So we're running out of time here, just a couple more minutes. I just want to see, Renee, did you want to add anything else in there? Any last comments or thoughts you had?
I mean, the only comment that I have is like, it just sounds from the statistic that I read, that bold change, we're talking about it. And that's what's necessary and needed in LAUSD. You know, distance learning is here and it's here to stay, whether these, you know, legislation or school district want it or not, we're going to make sure that it's here. In addition to that, when we talk about LAUSD, we all need to continue to challenge the district, make our voices heard, absolutely align ourselves with the board members, our Speak Up members, but also, as parents, we have to be engaged and make our voices heard. So that's all I have to say, but this has been a wonderful conversation.
And the other thing I've said in other Facebook Lives is we are not going back to business as usual. We are not going to just run back to our campuses and go back to business as usual. And also, as parents, let's not let people divide us. What this false narrative of we have to choose one or the other. We either all have to be back on campus or we all have to be online. We can be a little bit more innovative than that. We can do both, and we're not settling for one of the other. Like Sharon said, this is the 21st century, and we need to be able to do both. We have the capacity to do it, and we just need to push these people that are making the decisions about our kids' education to do that. So thank you so much for everybody for being here, Sharon and Tanisha. I really, really appreciate your voices and all of your input. I think this was a great conversation, and maybe we can continue. Any parents that want to get involved, feel free to contact me. My email is in the comments. And thank you all. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your summers, too. We all need a break. All right.
That was fun.